Welcome to Eminazhichiget, a podcast that celebrates Anishinaabeg leaders from across the Great Lakes. Eminazhichiget translates as a person who does good things for others, and it's a program of the Michigan-based nonprofit Title Track. Ojawaska Wasimokakwe Indijnakas, Nimki Indodam, Inde Indao. I'm Holly T. Bird, co-executive director of Title Track and host of Eminazhichiget. Hi, everyone. This is Holly Bird from Title Track, Michigan.org. We're here today with a good friend and an inspiring Anishinaabeg leader, Mark Wilson, as part of our series with the Eminazhichiget, where we explore Anishinaabeg leaders in Michigan and what they're doing, how they're doing it, and their words of wisdom for our community. So in doing that, I want to introduce Mark Wilson. He is the owner of Leonard Media. He is the former vice chair of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians Tribal Council. I guess I don't have to say that he's also a tribal member there. He is on the Traverse City Commission, and he was recently appointed as mayor pro tem for the city of Traverse City here in northern Michigan, which, to my knowledge, is the very first time they've had a person of color and much less a Native American in that role. And so, of course, we're really excited about that. And I'm so excited to have him here with us today.
Ani Kenegwea, Mayangan Indijnakas, Odawa, Anishinaabe, and Dao, Mangdodam, Kachi Wikwidong, Ndojaba, Mark Wilson, Jaganash, Noswin. I'm Mark Wilson, and my Anishinaabe name is Mayangan. I come from around the Big Bay, the Grand Traverse Bay, Kachi Wikwidong.
So, Mark, did I appropriately describe you today? And is there anything I missed?
Avid b-boy, skateboarder, MC, DJ. No, that was lovely, and made me sound very professional. I appreciate it.
And just as a note, I've known Mark for many years, probably even before he started on the current path that he is now. And it's been great to see him take this path forward and to see the good things that he's done. So, Mark, I'm gonna jump right into it, and thank you for being with us here today. Usually, with people who are in Anishinaabeg leadership or Native American leadership, people are always interested to know what inspires you to do what you do. And I have that question too about you. You have so many things that you've done, so many things that you've accomplished with this personal sort of Mark Wilson style. So, what inspires you to do what you do?
I'd have to dial way back to when I was a teenager and my skill set. So everything with New Leonard Media and everything that I've done politically, I look at as one and the same, as well as an effort to connect these the skill set and these opportunities within an elected body to connect that with my Anishinaabeg heritage. So I was half joking when I said that I'm an avid b-boy, MC, DJ. I am a lifelong DJ, and I'm absolutely in love and passionately in love with hip hop culture because I was my adolescence was during the 90s, and we call that the golden era of hip hop. And through that is a culture that was brought together that quickly gave identity to many cultures that had their identity stripped from them. And although my elders, your elders, our ancestors had passed traditions down from generations to generations, even when it was illegal to do so, we held on to these ways as the voice of the elders. I came into hip hop, and growing up with that around me, I recognized as something that was the voice of the youth. So coming into that as something I enjoyed and something that made me to be proud of a person of color, and finding ways to bring in my tribal heritage into the creative space Um, I developed a myriad of skills from audio and video production to graphic design, and spent most of my career working within that sphere. And over time, uh, I came to work for my tribe um, in the communications department. And during my time in that communications department, I got close to several different departments within the tribal government. And each department that I would get close to as I was helping them with their projects in a multimedia role, I got just inspired by how passionate each of these people were about their field, be it natural resources, behavioral health, even our dental clinic. And just all these people in these and every time I saw where they were taking their career and their program, I was inspired. I wanted to follow them there. And I'd have to back myself up sometimes and realize like, no, I'm not gonna chase becoming a biologist, and I'm not going to become a Head Start teacher. But all of those areas really intrigued me. I was very inspired by all the individuals and the hard work that they do, and wanted to be in a space that I could help contribute to all of them collectively. And in 2014, I saw that opportunity when some seats were going to open up on the tribal council for the Grand Traverse Band.
Fantastic. Now going back to something you talked about, which was the hip hop influence. Um, One thing that always strikes me, and a lot of people don't know that we have in our native communities, in our indigenous communities, our own hip hop artists that have taken inspiration and brought it to life in a native way. But what is the what is the common thread that you find as a native person, as an indigenous person, that really connected you to hip hop? Like, we know that, hip hop comes from Black artists and Black communities.
Mhm.
How did that happen for you?
Well, through, of course, it, started in the inner city in the Bronx, amongst the blacks and Latinos, and spread from city to city, and ultimately to the smaller towns of America and the globe. Um, but during that time, I mean, we have a lot of natives that found themselves in the city because of our reservations being so remote, and the lack of job opportunities led most to move to the cities. And it wasn't until within my lifetime that the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians was able to get reaffirmed as a tribe after termination era. And I don't know how much time we have on this podcast to go back through all of that and the efforts of gaining our status as a sovereign tribal nation, and then essentially buying our land back after it had been illegally taken post treaty era.
And we're still in that process, right?
Correct.
Actively. I mean, I
Correct.
say
So,
still because the region is in that process of still trying to get some of that land bought back and recognized.
and so the common thread for me was um, learning about hip hop just as a socio-political movement, and and several of the efforts, the positivity that was bringing all of these artists together, and not just rappers and DJs, but the graffiti artists and the break dancers, and the dance, and the culture that comes with it, the clothing style, the just everything that's in the mix, was was just really attractive. It became mainstream within my teen years, but it really touched me to realize that, like, it was an opportunity to be very proud of our tribal culture, but within a mainstream art space. Um, there's several, like you mentioned, several tribal artists that have brought our artistic cultures, our dance, our song, our dress into that world. Since hip hop is something that draws from everything, then you find artists like, say, Superman, who very talented rapper, beatboxer, bringing in these native elements to that art form. Um, was something that just made me really proud and excited to be part of that world, which ultimately brought me back to the root of our tribal culture and Anishinaabeg ceremony and ways. As a teenager, I think in almost any culture, uh, the kids tend to deviate from the values that their families raise them with, and I don't think the tribal community is any different. I was fortunate to be raised with the Grand Traverse Band, to be raised around cousins and relatives that attended Jinktamuk and ceremony um, and lived with these ways. But uh, as an adolescent, I came to take that for granted and deviated away. And I feel like hip hop was something that like brought me back to it. That by the time my kids were born and I was came into my late 20s, 30s, um, really drew me back to our cultural ways.
Very cool. I've always, with all the artists that I know in the hip hop world, it's always struck me that there's so much solidarity between the Black, Latino, indigenous cultures that have, you know, clung on to hip hop as an art form, and that kind of did birth that popularity. That's what spread it to all of these places. And even when I think about the beat, you know,
Yeah.
what does that beat sound like to you? Maybe you weren't running away or deviating so much. What do you think about that?
I do recognize that often the steady drum beat, um, be it loops or singers sitting at the drum and keeping the one steady rhythm, that the song that comes along with it tends to bring the individual to that higher space. So um, a really entertaining beat, a really inspiring beat is cool, but when you think of hip hop music, when it uh when it revolves a little bit quicker, to some folks it might be monotonous, but that opens up uh the opportunity for your mind to focus a little bit more on what the rapper is saying, because so many more words are being thrown at you and ideas over that beat. Yeah, I think it really connects to the same as our songs, our chants, if you will, or ways of practicing ceremony.
Yeah. It always strikes me because our songs, the traditional songs, that are played by all of our cultures are reflecting the mother's heartbeat, right? The heartbeat of Mother Earth, which for us also mirrors that of our mothers in the womb. And when they when in some of those songs they quicken or they jump beats, um, it kind of to me, I recognize the urban vibe in that, right? It like that totally connects to me that here when they do it, for example, during powwow, it's to talk about the hunt or to talk about love or, something that gets your heartbeat going. Whereas in hip hop, we know that, that's the beat of the streets, which is
Yeah,
probably a universal thing, isn't it?
yeah, I would say so. I would agree.
Oh, cool. Um, so with moving on to some more of what you talked about, which was moving into this position where you were sort of a conduit for all these different departments and different, um, peop seeing that people had different ways of being an inspiration to you, how much they loved their jobs and what they did for the people. Um, so you mentioned that you went for the tribal council job. How did that allow you to do that as a person?
Um, well, so different different governments are constructed and operate, and are designed differently. Uh, from what I've seen, a lot are similar, but there's differences. So with the Grand Traverse Band, the tribal council doesn't delegate out too many of the committees, and so if you think of uh, federalism having that local, state, national,
Mhm.
uh, tribes have that like direct government to government relationship with with the United States of America, but also has to operate within state and local relationships. And with that said, the tribe Grand Traverse Band government uh, doesn't delegate out like other local municipalities would have a separate planning commission, a separate housing board, a separate health board, etc. The Grand Traverse Band Tribal Council wears all of those hats as health board, housing, planning commission, economic development, and really is a full time role where all day, every single day, the council meets with various departments and has work session after work session to prepare for uh, the votes that occur uh, typically twice a month. So the regular session and a special session. So being in that role allows anybody that's serving to know a little bit about all of it and to get informed enough to really make a difference when voting on the policies that often I don't know how appropriate it is when an elected official brings forward something and says, "This is what I think is best
Mhm.
for this department." Often, I think we should be responding to what staff is bringing forward because they're the actual ones, the professionals in that particular field, and the ones handling the day to day operation of that, as well as dealing with the public who receive these services. Um, the elected body, we just hear either complaints. I mean, rarely you get somebody that comes to an open forum and gives praise, but often we hear when things are uh, askew or wrong, and uh, gives us an opportunity to kind of respond to that and work with staff to get through what the issues are that are making it difficult to enhance the well-being of the citizens that we serve. A lot of times when I'm sharing my story, I'm pretty open about that gap between straying away from uh, some of my family values through my teen years and to my 30s. And I think a lot of people try to reminisce on their 20s a bit as for glory days, but some like myself, we skip right over it because I uh, had gotten into some trouble through that time. So like a lot of what attracted me to the things that that I liked, so say about you had asked about like hip hop culture and the throughways was the way that I was brought up and the things that I was attracted to um led to some drug and alcohol abuse and some of that being highlighted through the party vibe of, rap songs, um, really made me connect. And it took a little longer for me to grow up and for the more conscious rap to start settling in. But before I was able to find my way out of certain uh, habits, I had found myself with a delivering and manufacturing charge, which was a felony. Um, and I wasn't able to get a plea deal because I had had a prior cannabis possession charge and a malicious destruction, a graffiti charge. And through that, as well as the birth of my first son, I missed the first 6 months of his life because I was incarcerated. And upon release, I had a felony drug charge on my record. And despite going to college and getting an associate's in uh, visual communications, I had a very hard time getting anybody to hire me. So um, sobriety and obstacles, hurdles that I created for myself. I did, you know, it was me who was selling drugs, nobody else when it was illegal, and that prevented me from working for my own tribe, tribal government for 5 years, and for tribal gaming for 10 years. So I wasn't attached to my tribe as much throughout that time because I was somewhat uh, not exiled. I was still a tribal citizen, but I couldn't rely on with a charge like that. You can't live in tribal housing,
Mhm.
or there were certain programs that I wasn't uh, no longer able to access, and one of that being housing, and the other being employment. Uh, so that is a major part of my story that took me from being a high school dropout to earning a master's degree in public administration, as well as achieving 20 years of sobriety. Um, no, those details are a very important part of my uh, story and who I am as a person, as an adult, as a father, husband, leader, and and after going through the efforts to have the felony expunged, we come to a time where under Governor Whitmer here in the state of Michigan, and with Dana Nessel putting the Clean Slate Act into place, that was all wiped away. My priors and the felony had already been expunged, and so things are sometimes only illegal until they're not. And I was proud that while serving on the tribal council, that I was able to vote to legalize cannabis on the reservation, and also vote to allow medicinal cannabis users to maintain their employment with the tribal government. And then, upon being elected to the Traverse City Commission, was able to participate in a vote to expand the recreational licenses available in the city of Traverse City. So this one thing that had held me down for a couple decades because of my decisions then, later became something that I was able to make sure never stands in the way of some of our other young adults.
Fantastic, and, thank you for being this is one of the reasons why I wanted to come and interview you for this. I've always appreciated your honesty, and, um, and your story, for a lot of us isn't that different from a lot of people, right? I mean, there is a connection between our oppression and the lifestyles that people enter into, sometimes because they don't feel like they have other options. Wouldn't
Yeah.
you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I was, um, well, I'll find the best way to deliver this. So sometimes, being raised poor, it, your parents are trying, and my parents were trying, and I didn't know I was poor, and I didn't know the neighborhood that I was around. So, even being raised here in our region, I went to the poorest elementary school in TCAPS,
Mhm,
and and that was fine. I mean, the kids I was around, we were all happy together. But it changes when all the elementary schools get pooled into one, during my time, it was a junior high, it wasn't middle school. We all get pooled into a junior high, and now, I find out that other kids have more,
mm,
or they're sure to let me know that I don't have what they have.
mhm,
And that's just old school kid stuff. I mean, bullying comes in many different forms. And so the school that I had gone to, the elementary school, I mean, kids would just fist fight. You say something mean to me, we're going to fight about it. For me in junior high, a kid says something mean to you and you put your hands on them, you're in trouble. You're suspended. And so I didn't know that the things that I dealt with, and the way I was acting out was actually anxiety. I was a very anxious kid, and that had been handed down
mhm,
from uh, my father and my mother, um, and what we know today as historical trauma.
mhm,
So my dad never lost custody of me, and that's a first for his bloodline.
mm,
Since uh, uh, since way back. So I mean, we all know, my dad was taken from his home. His parents were taken from their home. Their parents were taken from their home. Everybody was forced in either into different into boarding schools or found themselves in the foster care system. So for me, I didn't recognize, and I don't think my parents would have known how to deal with where I was at, especially when, I think they would agree that I was better behaved than, say, my father was.
mhm,
So long term, I've uh, I've I've stepped I've stepped it up. My dad did the best he could with me. His dad did what he could. I would say my dad was very fortunate that some of the foster homes that he was in were actually native homes, and people, the last, at least the last one he was in, where they actually loved him and helped him develop a pretty good work ethic, but not until after alcoholism had infected him. And so for me, our family dynamic, my sister was a teen parent, which meant I became an uncle very young. I'm the youngest of three children, and I think I became invisible child. So uh, it was easy for me to get in trouble. It was easy for me to uh, self medicate for my anxieties, and most importantly, or the worst, I once I turned 16, I probably stopped going to school within a week.
Mm,
And
mhm.
it's because I didn't like how it made me feel. And most of that was related to uh my self-esteem and self-worth and anxiety.
I'd never heard that part of your life, and um, it makes me hurt for you because I know your family and I know you, but also it's mirrored in my husband's family and it's mirrored in my family, in different ways. We talk about that collective trauma that we've had and that history of dysfunction in our families, which, I always say it's not, um I don't wanna discount our own actions, and I hear you being very specific about making your own choices, um, which I think is what is, brave and truthful, and I also see that with our people, I don't know how, many people would withstand some of the things our families had to go through. If, uh if colonists were trying to strike at the heart of Native people, they did by going after our families. And, you can go after our governments, you can go after our land, you could go after our property, but once you hit the family, that's where most of our oppression and dysfunction, the um the assaults against our spirit
Yeah.
too, right? And so it's a collective trauma. So when I hear you tell your story, I'm crying for you, but I'm also crying for all of us, right? Because we've all been part of systems that are trying to change that and are dealing with the after effects. I was telling someone the other day, like, fortunately in my family, we never were removed either, in part because I had a white mom.
Yeah.
We're gonna take her kids unless there was something going on with her. But how in my dad's family, uh, you can see even in census paperwork the way things that were done, but uh, we had that practice where when an unidentified white person came to the door, the kids would hide.
Yeah.
And in part, and then my grandfather, who was, on a border tribe, so he knew how things went. Um, he would tell them that the kids were white, and they wouldn't be able to see them to say anything different. Although they would note he was very dark complected.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, who didn't know any better, uh, she was from Mexico, indigenous from Mexico, but they'd see all the kids in the yard when she was there, and they had them all down as Indian. And then suddenly they would all move back to Chicago for a little while,
Yeah.
so those kinds of things that would happen. And, and so when I hear those stories, it's interesting for me knowing, I mean, not just knowing personally how it's affected people, but as a person who's been a judge for your tribe, I've gotten to see how all of that's played out in the system, from family to family who's had some this historical trauma happen to them, whether it was a boarding school or removals through the foster care system, and how that's played out on the next generation and the next generation after that. And so, for me, like, as we're doing this interview, and I'm so glad that you bring those things forward because particularly for our young people now who are still experiencing those things happening. We're still being removed at a rate not commensurate with others, we're still being, the system is still inequitably oppressing us in many ways. But, to see that you can go through those things and you can have a background and you can still be like Mark Wilson, you know? You can
That's
still do good things, but go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever too late for anybody to, step up and always, try to do the right thing. And, um, you know, serving on the tribal council it's different, and you would have to do it to understand it. But for the most part, as a public servant, you are related to everybody that is your constituent
Mm,
within the tribe, and so it's very, very. tough when you have to balance things out, and sometimes whatever way you vote, it's going to be the wrong answer for somebody, and
Mhm,
that's often how government is, and sometimes it's very heartbreaking
mhm,
because, um, y we see our people suffering, and you're just trying to do what the best you can for them. So it's taxing, and, um, I'm not gonna call myself weak, but I will say that I don't think it's, the best for anybody to serve multiple terms for too long. You know, you gotta know when, okay, maybe I serve again later on in life, but I'm gonna go take a breath and
mhm,
let somebody else, um, hold the seat and put their energy towards helping our people. And when I made that decision, um, some people in, my community here in Traverse City had asked if I would consider pulling a packet because that year, not too many folks had. There, there's always concern about who's going to run, who's going to get in. The sky's going to fall if somebody gets elected, um, and so okay, I pulled the packet and I got the signatures from my neighbors to get put on the ballot, and um, was elected to the city commission. And I didn't run on being the first person of color to serve. I don't. I hadn't even researched enough to know. I mean, I would just guess if that were true. And likely first indigenous. And what I really wanted was the voice of the kids like me.
mhm,
So I just shared a a piece of my story with you. But sometimes I think, it's pretty cushy here in Traverse City, you know? Uh the hot topic this past summer was leading towards upzoning, and whether that be the right or wrong thing for the community, and if we do this, is everybody going to rent out their shed, and is it all going to become vacation homes or whatnot? But what I see as an opportunity for folks to build an ADU, offset their housing expense for themselves, and potentially provide a home for somebody who doesn't have one,
mhm.
or kids that are raised here that are ready to move out of their parents' house, but they're not ready to buy a house.
Where they can't buy a house.
Yeah, these are opportunities for them.
Yeah.
During that process, a lot of the naysayers, I heard speaking from a real strong place of privilege, and that was something that reminded me of why I ran in the first place, because I had to take an opportunity to ask the people who came forward when they would say their piece. Some folks find it important to them to mention how long they've been here, or if they're second generation, third generation. Okay, that's cool, but I was very confident in that moment to say nobody in this room has a family who's been here longer than mine,
Right.
and
Right.
s- so I'm here to represent the person who just got here just as much as relatives from the indigenous community that are here, that have been here through every transformation that this area has gone through. And then I had to mention, the Record Eagle article. There was babies on the cover of the Record Eagle, out there in the pines, and we really need to stop and think about that,
Mhm.
and what can be done and what we can do to help. And um I know it's a scary place, but I don't know if many people that have that come into those chambers down at City Hall
Mhm.
have taken the time to even walk through there and talk to anybody there.
Mhm.
You know, I have, and it gives you a different perspective and uh, more drive to at least take up some cause
Mhm.
and make a push.